Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, it's a great pleasure and an honor to be with you tonight for this wonderful event and the wonderful work that all of you are supporting. It's something really inspiring and represents a lot of hard work and sacrifice, but something you can all be proud of. And so it's, as I say, it's an honor for me to be here to join with you. It's a great honor as well to be with Danny Danone. It brings back memories of my time at the United Nations, not all of them good. But it reminds me of two of the happiest moments that I had there when I was able to veto resolutions in the Security Council that were unjustly unfair to Israel. Those were the days. As most of you have no doubt noticed, we've just had an election in this country. And we're in what we call the transition period between Election Day and noon on the 20th of January. Now, I've been myself in a number of transitions, some going into a new administration, some coming out of one that was in office. It's always a period of uncertainty and sometimes concern, but certainly in this case, something I think it can give us a sense of real optimism looking forward for the U.S.-Israel relationship and so many other fronts as well. Because let's face it, we are in a very dangerous period of history, certainly for the United States and Israel in the Middle East. This is a time of emerging and continuing threats. And we can see the region as a whole having moved over the past several years from seeing a crisis in country A, a crisis in country B, and so on, to the entire region risking dissolving into anarchy and chaos. So this is a period, I think, when there has to be the closest possible cooperation between the United States and Israel. No hint of daylight, whatever. And as we look forward to noon on the 20th of January, which I'm certainly looking forward to, we have to acknowledge that there are potentials that should concern us, particularly for the state of Israel. There's no secret, if you listen to the conversations over on First Avenue, that a lot of countries anticipate that this may be their last moment for a long time to put Israel in a difficult position. There are discussions about resolutions, whether in the Security Council or in the General Assembly, that might do such things as recognize the existence of a Palestinian state, try and define the boundaries of that state, and obviously thereby define Israel's boundaries as well. Now, for a long period, since at least the 1967 war, it's been a bipartisan American policy that peace in the Middle East ultimately has to come by the actions of the parties in the region, that external efforts to impose peace are doomed to fail and almost inevitably are counterproductive. And that this idea that somehow the problems of the region can be resolved in the halls of the United Nations is a snare and a delusion. But it's a powerful delusion. It surfaces time and time and time again. We've seen it in several periods over the past 25 or 30 years. It plays out in ways that you can only understand if you look at what happens in the United Nations. If you go back, for example, to 1988, when the Palestinian Liberation Organization decided that it would take the cosmic step of changing its name card in the United Nations to Palestine, because it sounded a lot more like a state than simply Palestine Liberation Organization. This is the kind of thing that sounds silly to most people with common sense, but at the United Nations, it's a way you build positions and change the internal political dynamic. I think there is risk, and we have to be honest about this, that President Obama, in the waning days of his presidency, will not veto resolutions in the Security Council, will not lobby actively against resolutions that are harmful to Israel and harmful to the U.S.-Israel relationship, and may even join those who are strongly supporting such resolutions. I think it's important as American citizens that we make it very plain that we oppose any such action by this lame duck administration, that we expect that the president will not take actions, recognizing that he is our president until the 20th of January, but that he will follow in the tradition of almost all of his predecessors and not try to shape more than is absolutely necessary the environment internationally that his successor will have when he takes office. I remember well in the Bush 41 administration when President George H.W. Bush decided to intervene in Somalia just after Thanksgiving, almost exactly where we are now, to open up channels for humanitarian relief. And Brent Scowcroft told the incoming Clinton administration that we would do what we thought was necessary to accomplish that mission before the 20th of January. But if the new administration wanted the troops out by the 20th, they would be withdrawn. Now, it turned out that President-elect Clinton supported the action, so the troops remained there after he took office. But there was a clear recognition that on an issue that goes beyond the term of one president, that there should be this recognition and not prejudicing the new president when he comes in. This is something I think we need to stress for the next 6 weeks, maybe really given the schedule of the UN the next 3 or 4 weeks, and make sure that this danger does not materialize. But let's also be clear, sweetness and light are not going to break out in the region on the 20th of January alone because we're inaugurating a new president. The risks and the dangers that we can see there are real, but I think the new president will bring dramatic changes. As you may have noticed, he is not a conventional politician. Just on Friday, I had the honor to visit with him, and utterly unrelated to that visit, he also took a call that day from the president of Taiwan, Tsai Ing-wen, the first democratically elected female leader in 6,000 years of Chinese history. And they had a courtesy call that fairly typical from the readout I saw of more than 50 such calls that the president-elect has had. Now, this upset some people in distant parts of the world. It upset some people in the United States, too. And one of them, a former career member of the U.S. Foreign Service, sent out a tweet to express his dismay. He said, "What is Trump doing? He's not listening to the State Department." Yeah. So I would expect more of this kind of creativity. I think Donald Trump in the campaign made it clear his views on issues that are critical to everybody in this room. I am confident that for the first time, where other politicians have talked about where the location of the U.S. Embassy to Israel should be located, just as he didn't allow Beijing to dictate who he talks to on Taiwan, he's not going to allow other countries to dictate to us where we put the American embassy. I think he will recognize that construction of communities in Judea and Samaria are not obstacles to the peace process. I think there's going to be a lot of noise and controversy over some of these decisions. I don't think he'll be deterred by it at all. And I think this is really an opportunity for such a strengthening of the relationship between Israel and the United States, getting past this period of 8 years that's marked the worst time in relations between the State of Israel and the United States of America. There's never been any break in the relations between the peoples of the two countries, and now we're going to see outstanding relations restored at the governmental level as well. I think the President-elect will follow through on the commitment he made over and over again to seek the rapid destruction of ISIS and the so-called caliphate that it has set up in the region, to protect all of us in the United States, in Europe, in Israel, around the world from this threat of radical Islamic terrorism. And I'm confident that unlike the strategy we're pursuing now, that he'll seek from his military advisors a strategy that will accomplish that objective while minimizing the upside that falls to the Ayatollahs in Iran. Right now, the strategy that we're pursuing, this slow approach to the destruction of ISIS, is actually increasing the influence of Iran in the region, which is directly contrary to the interests of the United States and Israel. And when it comes to Iran itself and its extremely dangerous nuclear weapons and ballistic missile programs, I don't think that the President-elect could have made it any clearer just exactly what he thinks of the Iran nuclear deal. This was a strategic defeat for the United States when it was negotiated. Its agreement really represented, in my view, a Waterloo in American diplomatic history. The Ayatollahs never had the slightest intention of complying with the agreement. Its terms are so poorly negotiated that when you read it, it's like trying to nail Jell-O to a wall. It was written that way for the Ayatollahs' benefits, and even in these last 6 weeks, to come back to the dangers that we risked before the inauguration, you can see the incumbent administration doing everything that it can to try to increase the flow of benefits to Iran, to make it harder and harder to abrogate the deal. Speaker of the House Paul Ryan called Secretary of State John Kerry a shill for the Iranians, and he said he was acting as though he were president of the Tehran Chamber of Commerce. Now, when a mild-mannered man like Paul Ryan uses words like that, you can tell just how palpably damaging this conduct is. I think that the Iranian cooperation with North Korea, something that you never hear talk about and which, quite honestly, we don't know much about because of our intelligence failures in gaining information, is something that really threatens people around the world. The efforts to stop the proliferation of nuclear weapons and chemical and biological weapons, I'm sure, will be one of the Trump administration's highest priorities, as will be the importance of national missile defense for the United States, of the kind we have been cooperating with Israel on for Israel's defense from missile attack. This is something that I think is so important, not just for the United States and Israel, but for countries around the world. If rogue states continue to expand their nuclear capabilities, all of us are in danger. And one of the consequences, of course, of the Iran deal was to launch a nuclear arms race in the Middle East, with Saudi Arabia and Turkey, Egypt and others looking at the potential for nuclear weapons as well. It's a very dangerous world out there, and that's why strong American leadership to protect its interests around the world through the doctrine of peace through strength, close cooperation with our strongest allies like Israel, I think over time can repair the damage that we've sustained in the past few years and leave Israel and the United States in conditions of greater peace and security, which should be our objective through peaceful means. Thank you very much.